So I thought I'd do a follow-up from the first video on the heavy use area. You see it behind me. I'll spin the camera around. You can see what we got going on here. This is yesterday's pour. We did an apron out here. That's where, in theory, we'll be bringing heavy trucks in and out and running them down in there. Especially, my plan is to run wood chips in here to use for bedding and then turn that into compost after they've dirtied it up and mix it in with everything and accomplish two things: keep the floor from being too slippery for them and give them bedding, which the byproduct will be some really nice compost. So as you can see, we got the posts in for gates across there. We originally looked at pouring a wall like that wall. It's an 18-inch feed wall. Thought about pouring it across here, but that blocks this whole end permanently. And we decided we probably were better off with a series of heavy gates that I can open up and drive in there and scrape. Especially, I think the cattle are going to be dropping most of their gifts right here along this wall while they're eating. So I think I want access in through here. It gives me a few more options. I like to have a concrete wall, but gates will work and give me more options. This over here is the feed lane. Now, it was drawn out for 6 feet wide, and we're doing it 12 because I want to be able to drive down through there with a skid steer and push the hay over against the wall if need be, and be able to store some bales down through there. And we most likely will cover this with a roof. Cantilever it out here where they eat. So we'll try to do, I don't think we could get 8 feet of cantilever, but I've got to see what I can come up with for a truss design that will come off this wall and allow us to cover this 12-foot span and maybe another 6 or 8 feet hanging out where the cattle are. So they'll have shade when it's warm and have a little bit of cover in the rain or whatever, and it'll keep the hay dry. We feed mostly silage, but just the same, I really don't want the hay in there all soaked all the time. So I think if we can get this the way we want it, it'll work out a lot better. So the other day I ran from that riser there. I've got 220 to that riser that goes to this chicken coop, which is about to come out of here and open this whole area up. But anyway, I've got 2 1-inch lines that feed to my mother-in-law's house, and from that, underneath the mother-in-law's house all the way to my house into the basement, is tied into our well. So there's 2 1-inch water lines in there and 30 amps of 220. And I continued that underground here, out along the outside of this, and then turned into that riser down there. So I've got 220 and a 1-inch water line run to here. Having to do it over again, I probably would consider going 1/2-inch PEX in a sleeve. Only reason being, the more that water is moving, the less chance of freezing. Now I got 5 foot, no problem, almost 6 foot most of the distance. But right here, it's not quite as deep. I've probably got 4.5 feet down in that riser. And then it's sleeve from there over to here. And this is my water line here in a sleeve, the insulated tube, and then my power line comes up for the electric. And I put it all in a plastic culvert riser just to protect it all so I could get in there if I ever had to and create more insulation. I could always fill that area around it with peanuts or something, styrofoam peanuts or whatever to help hold the heat. The Ritchie water that's going in there, this is the first time I've used one. It has a heat element that is coiled up in there, and I need to uncoil it, and it drops down into that sleeve next to the water pipe all the way down in. And I think there's enough that'll go down underground for a ways. I did insulate that between the riser and there so that it's well protected. But with the heating element there and the heating element in the trough and the heated box, this obviously slides over into the center. So it has a float system goes in there. Down in here, if you can see it, is the heating element for the pan. So like I say, the first time I've used one. We'll see how it works. Everybody seems to say they work pretty well. This here, I still haven't finalized this. I may change this a little bit and put that board on an angle so we can clean in there better with the skid steer. But my thought is the water is going to be up on a riser, up on a curb, so that we don't have issues with backing into the water. It's protected. The cattle have to step up there onto the curb to drink. But I'm going to put a rough finish on that. This whole floor over here on this end, the feeding area, we did a fairly rough finish. We ended up using, and there's a lot of loose material on there still. A lot of that stuff's got to be swept off or will be broken off once we scrape it. But we used a broom rake, just your typical leaf rake, and ran it over it to give this more texture. There's the rake right there. So then this, on the other end, looking south, is the storage area. The walls are all up. I only needed 2 courses of block. I'm going to put 3. There's another load coming next Wednesday, and that'll finish this. I've got just a couple end blocks to put up. I need to order some 3-footers to figure that out. My overall dimensions originally were supposed to be 42 by 135 or something like that. And I ended up going 46 by 142. But then I also added those aprons out there. And it all pitches, other than the aprons, it all pitches, including from the water, on that side. I've got about 1.5 inch pitch from there across the floor over to here, and then this is our swale run out area, whatever you want to call it. We poured this yesterday. That's 6 inches deep. It's got a 2-inch swale to the center and 14 inches of drop down to that end. So that very end down there is 14 inches lower than this, and that's over roughly 78 or 80 feet. So we've got good pitch, and we've got good pitch this center. The original drawings called for 6 inches of drop. We've changed that. Got permission from the engineer. She wasn't worried about the actual 6 inches. She just wanted something for pitch in there to keep it in the pad. So I changed it to 2 inches, which seems to be plenty from looking at the garden hose. We textured this floor because in theory we're going to bring the cattle out through here, have a small gate there, and around this, and then they'll go out to pasture out that way past that dump trailer. We've brought in a bunch of fill out there to backfill the walls. They need to be filled up to that second course of the top of the second course of blocks. So we're still working on that. I think I have enough fill back there now to get around this. I've got another riser here that has a sleeve and a water pipe from over on the other side where the water is. So we'll have 220 power to here and to that pole, so I can put a light up and some outlets and probably a frost-free faucet. And somewhere over here, the chicken coop's going for the winter. I think right here, we're gonna move a bunch of junk again, move that trailer and back my chicken condo over there, bring it over here. And that way, that gets the chickens further from the house, puts them near the compost. We've got water right here for them. It should make life a little easier. And the other project I'm working on today while I'm prepping that last pour over there is I'm actually going to change this pole. I didn't see how bad this pole was till I stuck it in the ground. It was face down. That bad spot was face down. Got it in the ground and backfilled it. Came around the other side and said, "Oh, you fool." Of all the poles to put there, I picked the gnarliest, nastiest pole I could find, I guess. So I got a smaller one I can slide right down in that hole. I'll pull that and drop a new one in there, backfill that. But right here we're going to do a 16-foot, eventually 16 by, I think it's roughly 65 feet to that dumpster. And this end will pitch onto this pad, and it'll be storage of compost, so that in the springtime or year round I can bring compost from the pit once it's finished, bring it over here, dump it over this wall, and that's getting another course of block, by the way, and be stored on this pad where it's easy to access without having to drive in there whenever I have somebody come for compost, or we're going to spread. Excuse me, so that we're not going in and out of here for each bucket full of compost or driving tractors in and out any more than we have to. We can use this area to try to get some staged out here. And then the other end of this concrete pad where that lime is will most likely be chip storage. So I can bring in tractor trailer loads of chips, have them piled up here, and as needed I'll bring them into the pad and use them for bedding. Obviously, as I scrape up the pad, I'm going to need to replace what's here, and if I can stage 80 yards of chips at a time, get a tractor trailer load, and have it piled up here, that will save me running around gathering up chips. So hopefully we've laid this out right. I know, having never done one of these, having never even looked closely at one, I've learned a lot. I do a lot of things different. It remains to be seen once we put the cattle in here what I will do different, but suffice to say it's been quite a project, and with any luck next week we'll have the cattle in here and we'll learn from this and we can adapt. We've made enough provisions to allow for some changes if I need to. Obviously we can't change the size of the wall configuration, but there are a lot of things we can adapt if need be later. I've given myself some ways out if need be. So I'm gonna get back to prepping for concrete, but I wanted to let everybody see where we're at. And for those of you who are researching building one, this is what we did. Doesn't mean it's right, it just means it's what we ended up doing, and I'll report back once we have some cattle in here to let you know how this all worked out and what we would do different in the future. So that be it. Thank you.